Billionaire hears black farmer's daughter sing amazed. He secures her future. The crowd's thunderous applause shook the concert hall as Eliza Johnson, tears streaming down her face, stepped forward to accept the Grammy for Best New Artist. Her voice had carried her from the dusty fields of her father's struggling farm to the brightest stages in the world. As the golden trophy caught the light, her eyes found one figure in the audience, Maxwell Reed, the billionaire who had once stopped his Bentley on a country road because he heard an angel singing through an open barn door. Their eyes locked across the distance, a silent acknowledgement of the extraordinary journey they had shared and the prejudices they had overcome together. 3 years earlier, no one would have believed this moment possible, least of all Eliza herself. The Georgia sun beat down mercilessly on the cracked earth of the Johnson family farm in the summer of 2023. Samuel Johnson wiped sweat from his brow, the handkerchief coming away stained with the red clay that seemed determined to reclaim what his family had fought for generations to own. At 58, his hands were gnarled from decades of coaxing life from unforgiving soil, his dark skin weathered by sun and worry in equal measure. "Daddy, you need to come inside and rest." Eliza's voice carried across the field, sweet and clear as a church bell. At 19, she was the spitting image of her mother's same cocoa skin, same knowing eyes that seemed to see right through you, same stubborn tilt to her chin. Margaret Johnson had passed 5 years ago from cancer that went undiagnosed until it was too late, one more bitter reminder of the healthcare disparities that plagued rural communities like theirs. "Can't rest, baby girl. Rain's coming tomorrow. Need to get these seedlings in." Samuel straightened, wincing at the familiar ache in his lower back. Eliza crossed the field, work boots kicking up small clouds of dust with each determined step. She wore faded overalls over a simple cotton shirt, her thick hair pulled back in a practical bun. No one seeing her now would guess that when she sang, her voice could make angels weep. "The seedlings will wait an hour while you drink some lemonade and cool off. Dr. Patterson said you need to mind that heart of yours." She took the hoe from his calloused hands with gentle insistence. "I made cornbread too." Samuel relented with a soft chuckle. "You fight dirty, girl, just like your mama." He allowed his daughter to lead him toward the weathered farmhouse that had housed 4 generations of Johnsons. The white paint was peeling, revealing gray wood underneath, but the structure stood proud against the backdrop of their 20 acres. All that remained of what had once been a 100-acre farm before bad harvests and predatory loans had forced them to sell off parcel after parcel. As they approached the house, the rumble of an expensive engine made them both turn toward the narrow country road that bordered their property. A sleek black Bentley slowed as it approached, looking as out of place on the dusty lane as a peacock in a chicken coop. "Who in the world?" Samuel muttered, instinctively stepping slightly in front of his daughter. The car stopped, and the tinted window lowered to reveal a man in his early 40s with salt and pepper hair and piercing blue eyes. Maxwell Reed, tech billionaire and founder of Reed Innovations, had taken a wrong turn. His GPS had failed 20 minutes back, and he'd been following his instincts on the way to a meeting with potential investors in Atlanta. But something had made him slow down as he passed the Johnson farm, a hauntingly beautiful voice singing Amazing Grace that had drifted through his open window and straight into his soul. "Excuse me," he called out, his Boston accent striking against the southern air. "I seem to be lost. I'm trying to get to Atlanta." "You're a ways off, sir," Samuel replied, his tone polite but guarded. Experience had taught him caution around wealthy white men who appeared unexpectedly. "You'll want to head back about 5 miles, take a right at the Big Oak, then follow the signs to the highway." Maxwell nodded, but his attention had shifted to Eliza. "I heard someone singing as I drove by. Was that you?" Eliza shifted uncomfortably, unused to such direct attention. "Yes, sir, just passing the time while I worked." "It was extraordinary." Maxwell's voice held genuine awe. "I've attended performances at opera houses around the world, and I've never heard anything quite like it." Samuel's posture stiffened, his protective instincts flaring. "My daughter's got a fine voice, sure enough. Now about those directions, have you had any training?" Maxwell persisted, addressing Eliza directly. "No, sir," she answered, her eyes downcast. "Just church choir and what my mama taught me before she passed." A silence fell, broken only by the soft whir of the Bentley's idle engine. Maxwell Reed made a decision that would change all their lives. "I'd like to hear you sing properly. Would you be willing to perform something for me right now?" Samuel stepped forward. "Now look here, Mr. Reed, Maxwell Reed." He extended his hand through the window. Recognition dawned on Samuel's face. Everyone knew the Reed name. The man's face had been on the cover of Time magazine just last month. Mr. Reed, we're just simple folk trying to get through the day. My daughter isn't some curiosity for entertainment. Maxwell had the grace to look abashed. I apologize if I've offended you. That wasn't my intention. He pulled a business card from his pocket and held it out. I have connections with Juilliard and Berklee College of Music, a voice like hers. It shouldn't go undiscovered. Eliza looked up, her eyes suddenly alight with a dream she'd never dared voice aloud. Before her father could respond, she said, I'll sing for you, Mr. Reed. And there, in the dooryard of their humble farm, with chickens pecking at the dust nearby and the afternoon sun casting long shadows, Eliza Johnson sang Bridge Over Troubled Water. Her voice started soft, almost tentative, but grew in strength and emotion until it seemed to fill the entire countryside. She sang without accompaniment, yet somehow her voice created its own orchestration, rich with feeling and technical perfection she didn't even know she possessed. When the last note faded, Maxwell Reed sat completely still, his eyes suspiciously bright. Samuel stood transfixed, hearing his daughter's gift as if for the first time. The moment stretched, fragile and pregnant with possibility. Miss Johnson, Maxwell finally said, his voice rough with emotion, you have a rare and precious gift. I'd like to help you develop it, if you'll allow me. Why? Samuel's question cut through the air, direct and unvarnished. Maxwell met the older man's gaze squarely. Because true talent transcends everything else, race, background, circumstance. Because your daughter's voice just moved me more than anything has in years. He paused. And because I can. Behind them, the screen door creaked open, and Eliza's grandmother, Eliza Johnson, stepped onto the porch. At 79, she moved with deliberate grace, her cane tapping a rhythm on the wooden boards. Samuel, who's this white man in the fancy car? Her voice carried the wisdom and wariness of a woman who had lived through the civil rights movement, who had seen promises made and broken. He says he wants to help Eliza with her singing, Mama, Samuel replied, uncertainty evident in his tone. Ida's sharp eyes assessed Maxwell Reed. You planning to make my grandbaby famous, Mr. Big Shot? Maxwell smiled, genuine respect in his expression. No, ma'am. I'm planning to give her the opportunity to make herself famous if that's what she wants. Ida tapped her cane thoughtfully. You better come inside then. This isn't the kind of conversation to have in the hot sun with you sitting in that ridiculous car. Maxwell hesitated only briefly before turning off the engine and stepping out of the Bentley. His tailored suit and Italian leather shoes seemed to absorb the dust of the farm instantly, but he didn't appear to notice as he followed the Johnsons into their home. The farmhouse interior was modest but immaculately kept. Faded family photographs lined the walls, telling the story of generations who had worked this land. A worn Bible lay open on a side table, and the smell of cornbread filled the air. Maxwell sat at the kitchen table, accepting a glass of lemonade from Eliza with a murmured thanks. Now then, Ida said, settling herself across from him. What exactly are you proposing? Maxwell set down his glass. I'd like to sponsor Eliza for professional vocal training. Based on what I just heard, she could qualify for prestigious programs, Juilliard, Berklee, wherever she'd prefer. I have connections at both institutions. That costs money, Samuel stated flatly. More than we have. I would cover all expenses, Maxwell replied. Tuition, housing, living costs, everything. And what do you get out of this arrangement? Ida's question cut to the heart of the matter. Maxwell met her gaze directly. The satisfaction of helping an extraordinary talent reach its potential, and perhaps down the line, if Eliza becomes successful, she might consider performing at some charity events for my foundation. That's it. Samuel's disbelief was evident. No contracts, no percentages, no controlling her career. No contracts beyond a standard scholarship agreement, Maxwell confirmed. Her career would be entirely her own. Eliza, who had been quiet throughout the exchange, finally spoke. Why would you do this for a stranger, Mr. Reed? For someone like me? The question hung in the air, its implications clear. A wealthy white man offering help to a young black woman from a struggling farm history had taught the Johnsons to be suspicious of such generosity. Maxwell's expression softened. 15 years ago, I was broke, living in my car and coding what would become my first successful app. A stranger, a black man named James Washington, gave me a chance when no one else would. He invested the last $5,000 of his savings in my company. He paused. That company is now worth billions, and James passed away before I could truly repay him, so I made a promise to recognize exceptional talent wherever I found it and do what I could to nurture it. A thoughtful silence followed his words. Outside, a distant rumble of thunder hinted at the promised rain. I'd like some time to think about this, Eliza said finally. To pray on it. Maxwell nodded, standing. Of course, take all the time you need. He placed his business card on the table. My personal number is on the back. Call me when you've made a decision, whatever that may be. As Samuel walked him to his car, Maxwell paused. Mr. Johnson, I understand your caution, but your daughter's gift is once in a generation. It deserves to be shared. Samuel looked back at the farmhouse where Eliza stood watching from the window. That girl is all I have left of her mother. Her happiness means everything to me. I understand, Maxwell said quietly. Family is precious. After the Bentley disappeared down the dusty road, the Johnson family gathered around their kitchen table. The conversation stretched late into the evening, weighing opportunity against risk, dreams against practicality, and the unknown against the familiar. I don't trust him, Samuel admitted. Men like that don't just stop by farms like ours offering gifts without wanting something in return. His story about that James fellow sounded genuine to me, Ida countered. And I've lived long enough to spot a liar. Eliza sat quietly, turning the business card over in her hands. I've always dreamed of something like this, she finally admitted, but I never thought it could actually happen to me. Your mama would want you to fly, child, Ida said softly. She always said your voice was meant for bigger things than our church choir. Samuel closed his eyes, memories of Margaret's hopes for their daughter washing over him. If we consider this, we need to be smart. Check him out. Make sure everything's legitimate. The next morning, Samuel called his cousin Walter, who worked at a law firm in Atlanta. Walter promised to research Maxwell Reed and his foundation. By evening, he called back, sounding slightly awed. Sam, this man is the real deal. His foundation has put over 300 underprivileged kids through college. No strings attached, no publicity stunts. And that story about James Washington, completely true. Washington's widow sits on the foundation's board. A week later, Eliza called the number on the card. Maxwell answered immediately, as if he'd been waiting for her call. I want to accept your offer, she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. But I have conditions. I'm listening, Maxwell replied. I'll attend school during the year, but summers and holidays I come home to help my father with the farm. And I want something in writing that says you have no claim on my future earnings or career decisions. Maxwell's chuckle carried through the phone. Those aren't just reasonable conditions, Miss Johnson. They show good business sense. I'll have my lawyer draw up the paperwork immediately. 2 months later, Eliza Johnson stood in front of Juilliard School of Music in New York City, her father and grandmother flanking her like sentinels. Her few possessions were packed in her mother's old suitcase, and terror competed with exhilaration in her chest. You call us every night, Samuel instructed gruffly, trying to hide the emotion in his voice. And don't you let those city folks make you think you're any less than them, Ida added, straightening Eliza's collar. Your people picked cotton so you could pick whatever life you want. Eliza hugged them both fiercely, inhaling the familiar sense of home, her father's Old Spice aftershave, her grandmother's lavender sachet. I'll make you proud, she whispered. You already do, baby girl, Samuel replied, his voice breaking. You already do. Maxwell had arranged for a small apartment near the school and had provided a modest stipend for living expenses. He had also connected Eliza with a mentor, Sophia Williams, a renowned vocal coach who had worked with some of the greatest voices in the industry. Eliza's first days at Juilliard were a blur of overwhelming new experiences. The other students seemed to speak a different language, casually referencing composers and techniques she'd never heard of. Many came from privileged backgrounds, had been training since childhood, and regarded her with curiosity or, in some cases, thinly veiled condescension. So you're Maxwell Reed's charity case, remarked Vanessa Harrington, a tall, willowy blonde whose father owned a record label. I heard you were some kind of farm girl prodigy. I'm not a charity case, Eliza replied evenly. I'm a scholarship student. Same difference, Vanessa sniffed. Let's hear what a farm girl can do then. In her first performance class, Eliza's nerves nearly overwhelmed her. Standing before her peers and Professor Davis, a notoriously demanding instructor, she felt like an imposter. When she began to sing Amazing Grace, the only piece she felt confident performing without preparation, the room fell silent. Professor Davis, who had been checking his notes, slowly looked up. By the second verse, several students had tears in their eyes. When Eliza finished, the silence stretched for several heartbeats before the room erupted in spontaneous applause. Well, Professor Davis said, removing his glasses, it seems we have something quite extraordinary this year. But technical knowledge couldn't be replaced by raw talent alone. Eliza struggled with music theory, with reading sheet music, with the technical terminology that her classmates had absorbed over years of training. Late nights found her hunched over textbooks, her eyes burning as she forced herself to memorize terms and concepts that seemed to come naturally to others. Sophia Williams became her lifeline. The older woman who had broken barriers as one of the first successful black female opera singers in the 1980s recognized both Eliza's extraordinary gift and her vulnerabilities. "You have what can't be taught," Sophia told her during one particularly frustrating lesson. "They can learn technique for years and never have what flows naturally from you. But you need to master the language of music to fully express what's inside you." 3 months into her first semester, exhausted and overwhelmed, Eliza called her father in tears. "I don't belong here, Daddy. Everyone knows it. I'm just a farm girl playing pretend." "Now you listen to me, Eliza Margaret Johnson," Samuel's voice was firm. "Your great-grandfather was born a slave and died owning the land I farm today. Your mother worked 3 jobs to put herself through nursing school. Johnsons don't quit." "But what if I'm not good enough?" she whispered. "Child, God doesn't make mistakes. He gave you that voice for a reason." The conversation strengthened her resolve. Eliza redoubled her efforts, seeking extra help, practicing until her voice gave out, and gradually mastering the technical aspects of her craft. As her first year progressed, even Vanessa had to acknowledge her talent, though not without adding, "It's a shame you don't have the background to truly understand the nuances of classical training." Eliza bit back a retort, choosing instead to channel her frustrations into her performances. She found that when she sang of struggle, of perseverance, of hope in the face of adversity, themes she knew intimately, her audiences responded with profound emotion. Maxwell Reed kept his distance, checking in occasionally through Sophia but never interfering with Eliza's education. He attended her first-year recital, slipping into the back of the hall just as the lights dimmed and leaving before she could speak with him afterward. But he sent a bouquet of sunflowers, her mother's favorite, with a simple note. "You are extraordinary. Keep soaring." The summer after her first year, true to her word, Eliza returned to the farm. The contrast between her life in New York and the familiar rhythms of rural Georgia was jarring but grounding. She rose before dawn to help her father with chores, her hands quickly recallousing as she worked alongside him in the fields. "You seem different," Samuel observed one evening as they sat on the porch, watching fireflies rise from the grass. "I am different," Eliza admitted, "but I'm still me, too. Your mama would be busting with pride," he said softly. "Sometimes I think I hear her in your voice." Maxwell called once during her summer break. "How are you finding the readjustment to farm life?" Asked, genuine curiosity in his tone. "It's home," Eliza replied simply. "Hard work clears my head." "I understand that better than you might think," Maxwell said. "I still code sometimes when I need to reset simple problems with clear solutions." The conversation shifted to her plans for the coming year, and Maxwell mentioned an opportunity that made Eliza's heart race, a special winter showcase where industry professionals would be in attendance. "Sophia thinks you're ready," he told her. "This could open doors beyond Juilliard." "I don't know if I want doors beyond Juilliard yet," Eliza admitted. "I'm still trying to find my footing." "That's wise," Maxwell replied, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "The music industry can be brutal. Take your time, build your foundation." When Eliza returned to school for her second year, she found herself approaching her studies with newfound confidence. The technical aspects that had once seemed so foreign were becoming second nature, and she was beginning to experiment with her own interpretations of classical pieces. Professor Davis pulled her aside after class one day. "You have a rare ability to bring authentic emotion to technically demanding pieces, Miss Johnson. It's a combination that could take you very far." But success bred resentment in some quarters. Vanessa and her circle became increasingly hostile as Eliza's star rose. Rumors circulated that she was sleeping with Maxwell Reed, that she had manipulated her way into his patronage, that she was using her race to gain advantages. The whispers reached a crescendo when Eliza was selected as one of 3 students to perform at the winter showcase. Vanessa, who had not been chosen, confronted her in the practice rooms. "Everyone knows why you were selected," she hissed. "Playing the diversity card while batting your eyelashes at Reed. It's pathetic." Eliza stood her ground, years of facing down small-town prejudice stealing her spine. "I was selected because when I sing, people feel something. When you sing, they just hear notes." The showcase loomed, and Eliza threw herself into preparation. She selected Visi Dart from Puccini's Tosca, a challenging piece that showcased both her technical progress and emotional depth. Sophia worked with her tirelessly, pushing her to find the perfect balance between technical precision and raw emotional expression. The night of the showcase, Eliza peeked through the curtains to see a packed house. Her heart nearly stopped when she recognized not only Maxwell in the front row, but her father and grandmother as well. Maxwell had flown them in as a surprise, a gesture that brought tears to her eyes. When her name was called, Eliza stepped onto the stage in a simple blue gown that Sophia had helped her select. The spotlight felt like Georgia sunshine on her face, and as the first notes of the accompaniment began, she closed her eyes briefly, channeling all her experiences, the struggles, the doubts, the triumphs, the love of her family, the memory of her mother into her performance. The aria told of a woman questioning why, despite her devotion to art and love, she faced such suffering. Eliza infused every note with genuine emotion, her voice soaring through the hall with a maturity that belied her years. As the final note hung in the air, she opened her eyes to see the entire audience on their feet, her father openly weeping. Backstage, industry representatives swarmed around her. A woman from Atlantic Records pressed her card into Eliza's hand. "We need to talk," she said urgently. "You're exactly what we've been looking for." Maxwell kept his distance during the commotion, but later that evening he hosted a small dinner for Eliza and her family. As they finished their meal in a private room at an upscale restaurant, he finally spoke of the future. "You have options now," he told Eliza. "Record deals, concert opportunities, but I want you to know that your scholarship continues regardless of what you choose. Your education matters." Samuel, who had been quiet for much of the evening, studying the man who had changed their lives, finally asked the question that had been bothering him for over a year. "Why her, Mr. Reed? Out of all the talented kids in the world, why did my Eliza catch your attention?" Maxwell considered the question carefully. "When I heard her sing that day, it wasn't just her voice, though that alone would have been enough. It was the authenticity behind it. In my world, Mr. Johnson, authenticity is the rarest commodity of all." He paused. "And perhaps there was something else, a chance to honor James Washington's memory by passing forward the opportunity he gave me." Ida reached across the table and patted Maxwell's hand, a gesture of understanding between two people who had seen enough of life to recognize truth when they heard it. As their second year at Juilliard drew to a close, Eliza faced a decision. Atlantic Records had offered her a contract that would allow her to finish school while beginning to record. It was an unprecedented opportunity, but it would mean less time at home during breaks, more public scrutiny, and entering a world that had chewed up and spit out stronger souls than hers. "What should I do?" she asked Sophia during their final lesson of the year. The older woman considered carefully. "The industry will try to shape you into something marketable. They'll want to package your story, the farm girl discovered by a billionaire, into something that sells records. The question is whether you can hold onto your authentic voice in the midst of all that." Eliza thought of her mother, who had always told her that her voice was a gift meant to be shared. She thought of her father, who had taught her that hard work and integrity mattered more than fast success. She thought of her grandmother, who had lived through segregation and still managed to face each day with grace and strength. "I think I can," she said finally, "if I remember where I come from." The summer following her second year was a whirlwind of recording sessions, photo shoots, and meetings. Atlantic Records paired her with producers who helped her develop a sound that honored her classical training while appealing to contemporary audiences. Her first single, a soulful ballad called Roots and Wings, began climbing the charts, its lyrics speaking to her journey from farm to fame. Maxwell kept his promise, maintaining a respectful distance from her career while remaining available for advice when she sought it. When a predatory manager attempted to insert himself into her burgeoning success, it was Maxwell who quietly intervened, ensuring the man's reputation preceded him in industry circles. As Eliza's star rose, the Johnson farm underwent its own transformation. With her first advance, Eliza paid off the remaining mortgage and funded improvements that had been deferred for decades. Samuel, initially reluctant to accept his daughter's financial help, finally relented when she framed it as an investment in their shared heritage. "This land raised me," she told him. "It deserves to thrive too." By the time Eliza completed her third year at Juilliard, balancing her studies with her increasingly demanding career, Roots and Wings had gone platinum. Her debut album, released that spring, earned critical acclaim for its unique blend of classical influences, soul, and folk elements. Music critics praised her once-in-a-generation voice and authentic artistry that defies categorization. Fame brought its own challenges. Tabloids speculated about her relationship with Maxwell, painting salacious narratives that ignored the professional and respectful nature of their actual connection. Online trolls questioned her talent, suggesting her success stemmed from her story rather than her abilities. Former classmates, including Vanessa, gave interviews claiming they had always known she was special, rewriting history to place themselves in her narrative. Through it all, Eliza maintained her connection to home. She still spent time on the farm when her schedule allowed, still sang in her childhood church when she visited, still called her father every Sunday night without fail. She established a foundation that provided musical education to rural communities, ensuring other talented children wouldn't need a chance encounter with a billionaire to develop their gifts. 3 years after that fateful meeting on a dusty Georgia road, Eliza Johnson stood on the Grammy stage, accepting the award for Best New Artist. Her father and grandmother sat in the audience beside Maxwell Reed, an unlikely trio united by their love for the young woman whose voice had brought them together. "This award belongs to many people," Eliza said, her voice steady despite her emotion. "To my father, who taught me that hard work and integrity are the true measures of success. To my grandmother, who showed me that strength can be gentle. To my mother, who I know is watching from heaven and probably telling the angels they could learn a thing or two about singing." The audience laughed, and Eliza continued. "To Sophia Williams, who helped me find my technical voice without losing my authentic one. And to Maxwell Reed, who heard something worthwhile on a country road and had the generosity to help it grow." She held the award up, its golden gleam catching the light. "But mostly this belongs to every child with a dream that seems impossible, every person with a gift they're afraid to share, everyone who's been told that people like them don't belong in places like this. Your voice matters, your story matters, and somewhere someone is waiting to hear it." As the applause washed over her, Eliza caught Maxwell's eye in the audience. He nodded once, a gesture of profound respect between two people who had begun as strangers from different worlds and had become something much more meaningful, believers in each other's best possibilities. Later that night, at the after-party, a young reporter cornered Maxwell. "Did you know she would become this successful when you heard her singing on that farm?" Maxwell watched Eliza across the room, laughing with her father and grandmother, authentic despite the glittering surroundings. "Success can be measured in many ways," he replied. "But yes, I knew her voice would change lives. I just didn't expect one of them to be mine." In the years that followed, Eliza Johnson's career continued to soar. She completed her degree at Juilliard while producing chart-topping albums, performed at venues from Carnegie Hall to the Grand Ole Opry, and eventually won 5 more Grammys. But she never forgot the dusty farm where her journey began, or the unlikely friendship that had helped her share her gift with the world. The Johnson farm flourished under Samuel's continued care, becoming a working educational center where urban children could learn about agriculture and rural life. Ida, vibrant well into her 80s, became something of a celebrity herself, her straight-talking wisdom making her a favorite whenever she accompanied Eliza to events. And Maxwell Reed, whose impulsive stop on a country road had catalyzed it all, established the Margaret Johnson Vocal Arts Fellowship, providing financial support and mentoring to promising young singers from disadvantaged backgrounds. The program's mission statement, framed in its headquarters, quoted Eliza's Grammy acceptance speech. "Your voice matters, your story matters, and somewhere someone is waiting to hear it." The unlikely connection between a billionaire, a black farmer, and a young woman with an extraordinary gift reminded a divided world that authentic human connection transcends boundaries of race, class, and circumstance. That sometimes, the simple act of truly hearing another person can change everything. As Eliza often said when interviewed about her remarkable journey, "The greatest gift Mr. Reed gave me wasn't the money or the connections. It was that he stopped to listen when most people would have driven by. Sometimes, that's all any of us really need, someone who cares enough to stop and truly hear us."